let's turn our attention to the NFL. Had some teams hold mandatory minicamps last week. We have some of this week highlighted here by record and season result. Chiefs got the farthest, losing to the Eagles in Super Bowl, while the Seahawks and Giants did not make the postseason. All right, we've got some burning questions. These guys have answers. We're bringing back Tyler Sullivan and bringing in John Breech. Breech, you get to go first on the LA Rams, a team that went back-to-back 10-7 seasons. And Dvonte Adams now at SoFi Stadium. What do we think the Stafford-Adams connection is going to look like?
I think the Stafford-Adams connection is going to be one of those things where I draft Dvonte Adams high up in all my fantasy leagues. I'm not the fantasy guru here, but look, you look at what Dvonte Adams has done really over the past few seasons. Let's look at 2024. He played for two teams, the Raiders and the Jets, who did not have very good offenses, and yet he still managed to cross the 1,000-yard mark, which is very impressive. He's actually crossed it 1,000 yards in each of the past 5 seasons. Now you're pairing him with a quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who loves to sling the ball. I mean, the last time Dvonte Adams really had that was his final year with the Packers, was when he was with a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers, and he went over 1,500 yards that year. And then let's throw in the fact that you have Puka Nacua over there on the other side taking some pressure off Dvonte Adams. So I think he is going to put up some huge numbers. We know Matthew Stafford is talented. We know what he has done. We saw him lead the Rams to the Super Bowl in 2021, which was a very big year. He threw for almost 5,000 yards. And I'm mentioning that because that's when Cooper Kupp was healthy. And obviously Cooper Kupp not there anymore. But Matthew Stafford has 2 healthy receivers, 2 star receivers who are both going to want the ball. I think Stafford's going to have a big year and could get close to that 2021 number and maybe throw for 5,000 yards.
Could not agree with you more, Breech. Earlier this offseason, I had to write for the site the best quarterback receiver new duos in the NFL. This is my number one. When you have Matthew Stafford, as you highlighted, playing at that level, it's the best quarterback that Dvonte Adams has had in the last few years. And if you take what Dvonte Adams was able to do at the end of last season, when he really started to find his groove with Aaron Rodgers, the guy went absolutely nuclear with 5 touchdowns in the final 5 games. You project what he was able to do over a 17-game schedule. I have the numbers right here. 122 catches, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. Absolutely insane. Dvonte Adams went down the stretch. I think he's an upgrade at where he's at the stage of his career and where Cooper Kupp is at the stage of his career, now going with the Los Angeles Rams. I think that's an upgrade for Matthew Stafford. As you referenced, Breech, Adams gets an upgrade at quarterback in a pass-heavy, Sean McVay-led offense. I am buying as much Dvonte Adams and Los Angeles Rams stock as I can before we get to week 1. I think that this team is a sneaky player. If you remember, took the the reigning Super Bowl champions to the brink in the playoffs. I think this team is live in the NFC. I think this team is live for the Super Bowl because of additions like Dvonte Adams.
It's interesting. We flashed the odds there to win the NFC West. They're actually the second betting favorite behind the Niners, which is interesting, of course. But again, back-to-back 10-7 seasons for Sean McVay with some pretty good results. All right, let's get to the Giants, Breech. It's a crowded quarterback room. How soon do we think we're going to see Jackson Dart as QB1?
Well, the Giants brought in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston for a reason. I think the plan is obviously to go with the veteran in week 1, probably Russell Wilson. I would be shocked if Russell Wilson is not the week 1 starter. Now the question is, I think we see Jackson Dart when the season starts to fall apart. So when is that going to happen? Well, looking at their schedule, it could happen pretty early there. You look at those first 6 games. You played the Commanders, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Eagles, the Cowboys. That Thursday night game in week 6 against the Eagles, it is conceivable that the Giants lose that game. They fall to 1-5. Now you have 10 days to prepare for that week 7 game. Maybe you throw Jackson Dart in there. Now the flip side is maybe Russell Wilson plays better than expected. Maybe he leads them to a few surprise wins, so he keeps the job for at least half the season. I think you either see him week 7. My second guess would be after the week 14 bye. I think the Giants will be out of playoff contention by then. And then you throw Jackson Dart out there and you say, all right, man, you get the final 4 games of the season. Show us what you have because you are our quarterback of the future.
Yeah, that's exactly where I have it, too. In that Week 7 game, for all the reasons that you just referenced, Breech, the fact that they are playing the Philadelphia Eagles at home on Thursday Night Football, that sets up for a stage for them to possibly get embarrassed. You're talking about a team that possibly will be, one win going into that game when they go to New Orleans early this season. That's maybe where they get that one win. Everywhere else, you're going to be an underdog, and you're probably going to lose those games unless Russell Wilson, as you referenced, somehow sneaks you a win, or that defense and that new pass rush kind of sneaks you a win there as well. But I think that this team is going to be a one-win team going into that Thursday night game against Philadelphia in your own building, in prime time. There's a chance that the New York Giants get embarrassed on the national stage, and that's what sets the panic meters going sky high. Brian Daboll's seat is extremely hot. He has to make a move. That's possibly where he puts in Jackson Dart, because you have that little bit of a mini bye going from a Thursday night to the following week. It's not the easiest of landing spots, because we say, okay, that makes sense from a logistical standpoint. You have time to prepare, but that following game is at Denver against one of the top defenses in the NFL. So not the easiest landing spots for Dart, but that seems like the earliest window. If not, I do think after the bye makes a lot of sense as well. Most of those games after that are at home.
That schedule on paper is absolutely brutal for the G-Man. All right, no questions at quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. Breech, it's Lamar Jackson. However, 3-5 in the postseason, tough for him. He has yet to shed that off of his plate right now. What are we thinking about the Ravens this week?
Yeah, you look at Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. He's been their starter for 6 seasons. He's taken them to the playoffs 5 times. He's won 2 MVPs. What is there that he hasn't done? Well, get to the Super Bowl. That is the thing he hasn't done. That's the thing left on their plate. And so the question is, will this finally be the season where they break through? And you look at what Lamar Jackson has done in the playoffs. His first 3 appearances, he really struggled. He didn't really break through in the postseason until 2024. Played really well against the Texans, played really well against the Bills. Of course, they lost that game because of the Mark Andrews drop that maybe would have forced overtime. So as long as Lamar Jackson keeps playing better, the Ravens will likely eventually get to the Super Bowl. I think the one problem is that there are 3 quarterbacks standing in Baltimore's way. You look at who they've lost to in the postseason over the past few years. It's Josh Allen twice. It's Patrick Mahomes in the AFC title game. And then they also lost to the Bengals in a game where Lamar Jackson didn't play due to injury. But it's Joe Burrow. So you have to somehow beat the big guys. If you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And that's what the Ravens have not been able to do in the playoffs. So, and still Lamar Jackson, look, he's a top 4 quarterback. We all know that, top 2 quarterback. But if he wants to be in the postseason conversation, he has to win those games against Josh Allen. He has to win those games against Patrick Mahomes. He has to win those games against Joe Burrow in the postseason when it counts. So that's how you got to break through.
Yeah, it's a massive what-if last offseason, or last postseason, because of the Mark Andrews poor showing in that game against the Buffalo Bills. If he makes a couple of catches, we're talking about Lamar Jackson taking down Josh Allen, and then who knows what happens in an AFC championship. So to answer the question, can they break through? Yes, but I look internally with the Baltimore Ravens, and what are they going to be in 2025, specifically on the defensive side of the ball? Are they the team from weeks 11 to 18 where they were #1 in the NFL in basically every statistical category, or are they more like the team that gave up the most passing yards per game through weeks 1 through 10? What are we looking at defensively from the Baltimore Ravens? Because as you just said, Breech, as much as it's all going to be about Lamar Jackson, and we talk about these quarterbacks all the time, if this defense doesn't play up to snuff, you're talking about a playoff route that could possibly look like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes to get yourself to a Super Bowl. So yes, of course, Lamar Jackson has to go throw for throw, has to kind of get the monkey off of his back in the playoff settings. But this defense also needs to step up as well because of those quarterbacks that they're possibly going to have to face to get to that infamous Super Bowl.
They'll have another good team. Their best chance might have been 2 years ago when they hosted the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game and they weren't able to punch their ticket to the big game. All right. We're going to have Sully go first the rest of the way. And speaking of the Chiefs, the road to Arrowhead through Arrowhead has been the AFC. The Kansas City Chiefs have dominated that. 4 straight Super Bowls is kind of tough to do, Sully. What chances do you give Patrick Mahomes and company?
Well, I never rule out Patrick Mahomes because you're just silly if you do that, right? I mean, of course, it's ridiculous to go to 4 straight Super Bowls, but it's also ridiculous to possibly have a three-peat. We never thought that was possible before, and somehow Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were on the doorstep of doing it last year. The question is, and it's the same question that we had, or the key reason why they weren't able to complete the three-peat, is the offensive line. Yes, there's questions about, the offensive skill position players and how they're going to look coming off of injury or going to year 2, but the key reason this team wasn't able to win the Super Bowl last year is because Patrick Mahomes was sacked more than any other time in his NFL career. Now, they went in this offseason. They drafted Josh Simmons in the first round. They signed Jalen Moore to a $30 million deal to possibly find the answer at left tackle. It remains to be seen how that ultimately shakes out. This division is a lot more it's a lot tougher. A lot of those teams in the AFC West got better this offseason. We just talked about it with the Baltimore Ravens, the gauntlet of quarterbacks in the AFC, and Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. It's going to be difficult. Can they do it? Yes. But that road is really tough.
And look, every time I doubt the Chiefs before the season starts, someone at the end of the season throws the clip back in my face, and I always deserve it. But apparently I've learned nothing, because I do not think the Chiefs will be back in the Super Bowl. I do think they make the playoffs. I do think they win the AFC West. I don't think they get dethroned just yet. But as Tyler outlined, it's the offensive line. Way too many question marks for me. They got dominated in the Super Bowl, and I think they will struggle to keep Patrick Mahomes upright once the postseason starts. So I think, once again, they win the AFC West. Don't get to the Super Bowl, though.
If they won, they can play the disrespecting card from odds makers because both Buffalo and Baltimore have shorter odds than Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. And then there's the Seattle Seahawks. Sully, they trade Geno Smith to the Raiders to decide to go with Sam Darnold at quarterback. So are we going to get the first 16 games of Vikings Darnold, or the last 2 that we saw to end their year?
I think it's going to look more like the last 2. Now, I don't think it's going to be that bad, because then we'd be talking about the Seattle Seahawks possibly, sending things over to Milroe at a certain point, their draft pick out of Alabama. So I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I don't think it's going to be as prolific as we saw Sam Darnold for the bulk of last season with the Minnesota Vikings. That was over 4,000 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I don't think we're seeing that. I think that the Minnesota Vikings, I don't think we talk about it as much as we should. How perfect of a situation he landed in with the Vikings last season. You're talking about arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson, a fantastic number 2 in Jordan Addison. You have TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones in the backfield, a good offensive line, a coach of the year in Kevin O'Connell in his ear. That's why I like JJ McCarthy so much, even though we haven't seen him in 2025, because you look at that situation and say, boy, that is the best situation for a quarterback in the NFL. Now he goes to Seattle. I don't know if that situation is as great. Yes, they have Cooper Kupp. Yes, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's pieces to like there. I have questions about the offensive line, and that was a key reason for his kind of downfall at the end of last season, starting to get more pressured. Teams seem to figure him out. So I have my questions about going into a division with a stellar pass rush with the 49ers, the Rams. I have my questions. I have my doubts about Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it feels like Darnold traded in a convertible for a minivan. And not that there's anything wrong with minivans, but it just feels like there's a step down in every aspect of going from the Vikings to the Seahawks. He now has to play outdoors. The offensive line isn't as good. The receivers aren't as good. And so I think that is going to set up Darnold to struggle. He wasn't great under pressure. He's probably going to be under a lot of pressure. The Seahawks gave up the 3rd most sacks in the NFL last season. So this could be a long year for Sam Darnold. I do not think he will come close to matching the success he had in Minnesota last season.
We'll see how it works out for him and Coach McDonald in the Pacific Northwest. Our thanks to John Breech and Tyler Sullivan. CBS Sports HQ, we've got you covered, folks. News, highlights, and scores. It's all here. And the best part is it's all free.